What's up, YouTube?
Start it up.
This is the Fezzari LaSalle Peak. I've been a long-time Santa Cruz rider. However, Fezzari was confident they could convert me and, well, they sent this frame. Lifting a brand new frame out of the box is super exciting. However, this felt a little different. I only rode this bike around the parking lot at an event, and some of the reviews I watched said it's more of a trail bike than a rock smasher. Needless to say, I went into this build a little conflicted. Before I get into that, let's talk about the build. On this one, I used some of my tried and true parts and ventured outside of the box a little bit. I will say the beauty of Fezzari is you can buy a pre-spec build, or you can go through the website and build it yourself. And if that's not good enough, you can always grab the frame with your choice of suspension, just like I did. I started with the 1-up dropper because they're bulletproof, and they also come in a 210mm drop. I love using a specialized power comp saddle, and if you prefer comfort over weight, get the Mimic. It's what I typically use. Next to the geometry of the bike, the suspension is typically what makes you love it or hate it. In this case, I've been demoing EXT for a long-term review, and if I had to sum it up in as short as possible, it would be something like this. Oh my God. It's been a complete game changer, and is one of those things I've always wanted to try, but was afraid to because of the cost. The bottom line here is, if you haven't ever ridden a coil, you're missing out. And if you haven't ridden an EXT, you're really missing out. The coil has two different settings that completely change the tune. So you could have one that's stiffer for pedaling or for when you want it more poppy. And with the flip of the switch, you're ready for smashing some rocks. The team over at EXT can tune it to your preference and are really good at translating something like, "The brake bumps feel like doo-doo," into a few clicks here and there, and boom, like magic, it's everything you dreamt of. On the other hand, the fork takes a little bit to tune exactly to your liking. EXT is out of Italy, but has US distribution and service. With that being said, the fork's like driving an Italian sports car versus something like a Mustang or a Camaro. They're both fast, but this thing is made to perform at a different level. The SRAM transmission dropped right when I got this frame, and without making this a drivetrain review, I'll say that it shifts slower than Axis, but since you can shift while under load, you don't notice it. I'm skeptical it'll shift this good over time, but I've already crashed on it, banged it off a boatload of rocks, and somehow it's still shifting good. In general, most people think the pedaling innovation pedals are bulky and look stupid. However, every person that's borrowed my loaner set has bought them. I keep trying other flats and nothing's made me stop wanting to ride these. If you're tired of your arches hurting or feeling like your feet are just curling around your pedal, buy some of these. It's life-changing, especially if you have big feet. I have a link in Show More that takes you to their site and helps out the channel if you decide to buy them. I've wanted to try SpokeX wheels because they're a small California-based business that I've heard lots of good things about. Plus, these carbon hoops don't break the bank. You can get a hand-built set with DT Swiss 350 hubs, tape, and valve stems included for a hair over $1,100. I got the Silent Onyx hubs, and for the set, it was only $1,350. Just for comparison, I added both sets of wheels to a cart, and it was only $70 more for 2 sets of SpokeX than for one single set of similar Santa Cruz reserves with the same warranty. The hoops have been great so far, and the Onyx hubs combined with the SRAM transmission make this thing so quiet when riding, it's a whole different experience. At times, it's even kind of weird. It almost makes you think something's broken. I put a 35mm 1-up stem paired with their 35mm Rise carbon bars, and these bars feel great. After I slapped on some Mallory V2 grips, my hands are happy. Speaking of hands, I decided to try the TRP DHR Evo brakes with 220mm rotors. After having Freedom Coast on the Biker Bar podcast, they sent me a pair of their levers to try out, and I never thought I'd be so stoked off of how my levers feel. Plus, they look dope too. The brakes, on the other hand, are in between the modulation of SRAM and Shimano. And I've been riding Saints for years, so they just don't seem to have enough bite for me. I swapped the pads out because the factory ones were super noisy, and although the red MTX pads are much quieter, I may try the gold ones just for a little more bite. If that doesn't get me stoked, I'm putting the Saints back on. Brake feel is a personal preference, so if me fanboying Saints gets you triggered, let me know in the comments what your favorite brake is. After all that, the bike was built, and as I did a little circle around the driveway, I was nervous about this build. That cockpit feels so tight. I am a little scared. I figured the best place to take this thing for a shakedown ride would be my local stomping grounds in Auburn. I've spent countless hours on these trails, so any difference in the ride will be noticed.
Getting ready to take the maiden voyage, and before I do, I have to level with you guys. I'm a little worried. However, I'm a little bit excited that it may pedal better. We'll find out because we're climbing right out the gate.
And without further ado, here's my unfiltered thoughts.
Honestly, it feels like it's pedaling really good. This thing is so quiet. Oh my God, it's kind of uncanny. I was originally saying that I thought the cockpit felt small and crammed, but right now, climbing, it feels fine. I think that maybe I was overanalyzing in my head or something. Whew, feels super light in the air. It's like weighted really well. God, that suspension feels good. Man, I can't tell you guys how much I miss my coil.
This type of chatter is where the EXT really shines. You feel so glued to the ground.
Woo!
It's one of those moments where you wonder where the suspension's been all of your life.
God, that thing, suspension just feels so good. I will say, man, this thing feels like totally alive in the air. Is definitely doesn't it wakes up once you get in the air. The Bronson felt a little bit more heavy in the air, and this definitely feels lighter. I'm definitely noticing not having that 34 kind of engagement on the oval. It's like when I'm pedaling, I can feel like I'm looping out with this 32 round.
After a few rides, I went ahead and pulled the trigger on an absolute black oval because this was pretty irritating.
Man, I don't know if it's the pedaling platform, but this thing definitely feels like it pedals better than the Bronson did, which is surprising. I keep thinking I'm in the Eagle, but I'm actually one down. So that's a good thing.
As you can see, things were falling into place well on my home trails. However, I do a lot of riding at high altitude, and I needed to see how this bike would treat me there. Before we do that, on a scale of 1 to complete pitch, how did I handle this rattlesnake? And just in case that was too quick for you,
oh shit! That was a rattler. Oh, that was a full-on bitch scream.
back to the bike. I once heard that the Bronson was specifically designed to ride Downeyville. Allegedly, one of the Santa Cruz guys had a place up there and wanted the perfect tool for that kind of riding. With that in mind, we headed up to Packer Saddle and set out on a route I'd never done before. Long story short, I did a master class on climbing at high altitude with this thing. And at the end of the day, this almost 36-pound 170 bike just completely blew my mind on how well it pedaled.
I wanted this to be my bike that I take on rides like this that are super chunky and technical, but still a bit of pedaling. And I knew it would shine in the chunky stuff, but I was really concerned about these big climbs at elevation being just awful. Surprisingly, this thing is way more of a capable climber than I would have bet money on. I would have definitely bet against this thing.
One thing I have to say about this bike is it's really stable at speed. Obviously, this comes from the long wheelbase. One way or another, when I'm cooking downhill, this bike gives me the confidence not to yank the brakes. On top of that, the mullet setup really helps keep this bike have a super active feel. Right from the first ride, I felt at home on it. Oh, and in case that just slipped by, I have this set up as a mullet. You can run it that way or as a full 29er if that's what you're into. I do want to address my initial complaint about the cockpit being too small. I feel like that was just me feeling the difference in the seat tube angle. Fezzari designs with a steeper seat tube angle than Santa Cruz for better pedaling, which hands down, this thing climbs great, but it does put you in a different body position. This leads me to my biggest complaint, no fault to Fezzari. but I prefer a smaller frame, and I really think I should have got a large. Because I fall on the cusp with the sizing and I had that initial cramp feeling, I thought I should size up, but at the end of the day, I think maybe I should have stuck with a large. Sometimes in the technical bits, I feel like the bike's a little bit too long and not as twitchy as I want it to be, and until I ride a large, I can't tell if this is a sizing thing or just what happens when you ride a 170mm rock smashing machine. My other complaint could be a meat problem as well, but when I put on the TRP brakes with the TRP brake adapters, they rubbed my rotor. In my eyes, that's TRP's problem. I found out the Shimano ones are a little bit thinner, so I used those instead. But then my rotor was rubbing the ride wrap on the frame. I ended up having to put a washer between my hub and the frame to fix this. I'll say this right now, that's no fun to deal with. Fortunately, I have access to a machine shop and was able to make a part to make my life easier. This could be an inconsistency with the hubs, or it could be the perfect storm of the wider rotors and the ride wrap added together. I don't know. One way or another, I figured I should mention it. In Fezzari's defense, I will say a friend of mine just reached out to me, had the exact same problem with a different brand bike. A few months ago when I started this whole process, I really didn't think the LaSalle Peak was going to be the bike for me. I thought I'd do this review and I'd sell it. But instead, I can tell you right now, I would not hesitate to buy this bike or any other bike from Fezzari. It comes down to a few things. Right out the gate, they offer a 23-point fit to make sure the bike fits you correctly. Outside of that, they have the normal builds, but they also let you customize the builds to be more individualized to what you want. In today's day and age and how tough the bike market is, I think every company should be doing this, and it's honestly a pleasure to see something like that. Top of all of that, because they're direct to consumer, they give you 30 days to get the bike, take it out on your local trails, ride the hell out of it, find out if it really makes a difference to you, and if not, you can send it back. And once you decide to keep it, guess what? Lifetime warranty. At the end of the day, I think that really speaks to how much they trust their process and their product. And I'm looking forward to trying some other Fezzari products. Until then, remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.